Our next speaker from St. Petersburg, Florida is Peter Kageyama, a Pied Piper for those who love cities. Peter loves cities, big cities, small cities, villages, and small towns, and what he loves most about them is the amazing people he meets when consulting on community and economic development issues. He thinks he has found the secret sauce of successful cities, and he's going to share some of those insights from his book, For the Love of Cities. Please welcome from St. Petersburg, Florida, Peter Kageyama.
Love matters. I don't need to prove that to you. We all know it. We all feel it. In the context of our conversation today, I don't believe we will reach our creative potential until we are all loved as people, as organizations, and certainly as cities. And I'd like to talk today about the value of loving our cities and how we come to that particular point. It's an easy thing to say we love a city, and you hear it an awful lot, but it actually turns out the notion is a little bit more rare than we'd like to believe. Between 2008 and 2010, the Gallup organization, in conjunction with the Knight Foundation, conducted what they called the Soul of the Community survey. They interviewed 40,000 people, 26 cities, and they basically took the temperature of our relationship with our places, and it turns out that relationship is actually not very good. 40% of people said they were unattached to their place, 36% are neutral, and just 24%, less than 1/4 of us, are actually attached to our place. Now, at the same time, they were actually correlating this with economic data, and they found the places that had the highest levels of emotional engagement, passion, and loyalty also had the highest corresponding GDP and local economic vitality. Interesting. Now, the fact that love matters really shouldn't surprise any of us. We all know this. Again, when children are loved, they thrive. Pets, plants, and objects. And I do mean objects. And take, for instance, the car. Now, almost all of us have some sort of relationship with an automobile. Good, bad, or indifferent. But most of our cars probably look a little bit like this particular vehicle. Maybe needs a little bit of a bath, maybe needs a little bit of maintenance, but it's functional. It gets us from point A to point B. And we treat it like a tool, a very functional tool. But we all know some people who love cars, right? They're the ones who are out there on weekends. They're polishing that car with a chamois. They're changing the oil even if they haven't driven it an inch. Those people love that car. And that car looks and feels very different than the car you and I probably drive, because they have invested some of their identity, some of their emotional content, some of their love into that car, and it shows. And don't you think if we invested our emotional content into our places, our communities also would shine like those cars? I do believe they would. The question of what we love and hate about cities is actually something I've been asking for years now, and it's been really interesting to hear the responses, because people are very clear about what they hate about their cities. They hate big things, big intractable problems like transportation and parking, the education system, bad planning, ugly design. Big intractable problems you could spend a ton of money trying to fix, and I'm not sure you'd ever truly fix them. And perhaps nothing represents this more than the pothole. We all hate potholes, right? So we complain to city council fills in potholes, and they think this is the nature of our relationship. Well, I can tell you this, you could fill every pothole in Loveland, and people would say, well, thanks, the streets don't suck quite so bad. You get no love for filling potholes. No love. So the question becomes, well, how do we generate some love in our communities? And it turns out the things that we love about our places tend to be small things, intimate things. And in my book, I liken these things to a handwritten love note. It's that small moment that we take when we make an emotional connection with our significant other, our friends, our family, and we write something. And we make that little thing that has an outsized impact on the way we feel about that gift and that person. So these love notes are kind of interesting. They could be something like a place to sit and people watch, like the fantastically redesigned Times Square in New York City, where you can do the one thing you always wanted to do, which is people watch. And while you're there in New York City, you should think about green space, a small moment of respite in a big urban environment like Highline Park, green space. How about public art that we can play with, like Millennium Park in Chicago? And people call this the Bean, although it's officially known as Cloudgate. All good public art, by the way, should get a nickname, even if it's a derogatory nickname. Because if it didn't, I don't think the art is named high enough, and I don't think it captured our imagination. But play is incredibly important, and this is a great way to play with our communities. How about the opportunity to hang out with our best four-legged friend and our best two-legged friend at a dog park? These small things where we create community, a sense of engagement, and a sense of connection with our places. How about a playground? A playground. Think about it. When kids are happy, parents are happy. If we could have more playgrounds, certainly that would do a lot to encourage this relationship we have with our cities. When parents are happy, the city is happy as well. And all of you probably have a farmer's market in your city. I think every city in America now has a farmer's market. We tend to think of them as sort of nice. It's like, okay, that's cute. But when you actually think about it, these are really important. And this is the Saturday morning market in downtown St. Petersburg where I live. And I like to say it's where St. Petersburg goes to meet itself. And think about how important that Saturday morning market or that farmer's market is in your own community. Go, yeah, I meet my friends, I buy my fresh produce, I see some cool stuff, I hang out with other people. That's really important, and it is. And it's a small thing in the grand scheme of our city. How about ritual and tradition? This is water fire in Providence, Rhode Island. And what they do is they essentially light the river on fire with these braziers that are in the downtown river that culminate into this downtown lake. And it's basically like a municipal bonfire that stretches throughout the city, and it's wonderful. How about your own tradition here in Loveland of the Valentine's Day remailing program, which has been going on for over 60 years. And not only does it bring the community together, but it identifies you to the broader world as the sweetheart city, as Loveland, Colorado. And I think this is a wonderful ritual tradition that you guys have fully embraced. And I see all kinds of evidence as I've been touring around the last couple of days. Ultimately, though, the things that make cities lovable are the people that are in love with those cities. And we all know these types of folks. And this is my friend Bob Devin Jones. He is the creative director of a small black box theater in downtown St. Petersburg, Florida. And I like to say he is a central hub in what makes St. Petersburg a great place to live, work, and play. But he doesn't show up on any traditional sort of city org chart. He's not an official ambassador, he doesn't work for the city or anything like that. But Bob, if we were to lose Bob, we would lose all of the great stuff that he does, all of the people that he connects, all of the things that he makes happen. And I call these folks co-creators. And you folks probably know co-creators in your own community. Considering that this is TEDx, you guys are probably the co-creators in your own community, and welcome. And I need you guys to think of yourself as an important aspect of your community. You are these anchor personas. We talk about anchor businesses and anchor institutions. Well, think about the anchor personas that really make your cities go. Folks like Phil Cooley and Claire Nelson, where sometimes just the context of where they do it matters. And in Detroit, a place where you haven't seen a whole lot of new restaurants being opened, Phil and his friends rehabbed an old building and created one of the hottest restaurants in Detroit, and Claire opened up a retail shop in a part of Detroit that hadn't seen any new retail in years. Context matters. Or how about a simple idea? This is Robert Fogarty, and after Hurricane Katrina, he moved from New York City and he joined AmeriCorps and moved down to New Orleans because he wanted to help rebuild that city. And 2 years later, he starts a not-for-profit, and as a little side project to fund that not-for-profit, he creates this little photographic thing called Dear New Orleans, which has now become Dear World. And it was this very simple idea of taking portraits and having people write with that dry erase marker a love note to the city of New Orleans, and how important and how powerful that was when people started changing their Facebook profile pages and sharing those photos, and people saw that other people still cared. Other people still gave a damn about New Orleans. Powerful stuff. Simple. This kind of stuff. Loving your city. This was from St. Louis. This is Jeff Slobodsky. He's a social entrepreneur. He and his friends started Silicon Prairie News in Omaha because they felt that they were being disregarded by the traditional media who sort of treat the middle part of this country sort of the flyover states. Well, they said, we're going to tell the stories about growth and entrepreneurship and technology that are actually happening here. Co-creator in his place. This is Amanda Styron and Andy Stoll. They graduated from the University of Iowa, but after the floods in Iowa in 2008, they moved back to Cedar Rapids because they wanted to help rebuild that city. And since then, they've started a downtown co-working space called The Vault, and they're part of these young professionals who are flocking back to Cedar Rapids because they want to help fix that city. They want to help rebuild that city. This is Andrew Anderson. He is from a small town in Iowa called Muscatine. And he told me, he said, Muscatine doesn't think of itself as being very creative. So I wanted us to think, to prove that we actually can be creative. So he took this little local legend about this river monster, because they're right there on the Mississippi River. And he said, we're going to make something of that. So he created the Muscatine River Monster. And it's one of those flying kinds of things you should see out in front of like auto dealerships and whatnot. And this thing is now moved around from place to place. It's become incredibly popular all over the city because people now want it. It's like, hey, bring the monster to us. And by doing that, people smile, they wanted to have their picture taken, and he's shown them that they are actually a creative community, that they can do this kind of stuff. That, hey, we are kind of weird, we're kind of wacky, and we are creative. This is how we reach our creative potential, by sometimes stepping out of the box and doing something just weird and novel, and simply for the pleasure of it. And sometimes it's people who just live it. This is Katie O'Keefe, and she's from Cleveland, Ohio. As you can tell on her arm, as you can see a little closer, that's actually the Terminal Tower in the Cleveland skyline and a very famous statue from the city of Cleveland. And I'd like to think of her as she is sort of a living barometer of how Cleveland is going. If Katie feels like Cleveland's going, if she's happy, I think Cleveland's going good. If she's sad, I would worry, because she is sort of the canary in the coal mine of somebody who literally wears the love of their city on their sleeve. Do any of you have a city tattoo for your city? Interesting question. Now, we need to think of these co-creators as the natural resource in communities that they actually are. I told you, anchor institutions, anchor businesses, anchor personas. These people are really important. Well, how do we motivate these folks? Because I can guarantee you it's not traditional, carrots and sticks. These people are not necessarily chasing a paycheck, because there's easier ways to make money, and there's certainly easier places to go than where most of these people have chosen to deploy their talents and to do what they do. But what are they actually seeking? Well, I think it's meaning. All of us, I think, are in a sense chasing meaning. But certainly some of us would put this even before, the idea of a paycheck and financial security and some of those kinds of things. That we want what we do to matter. That at the end of the day, we want to feel like we made our community, our world a little bit better place. Now, there's certainly great big cities that, that you could probably do that in, but there's certainly smaller towns where that certainly means a little bit more. If you think about Cedar Rapids or Detroit or New Orleans, there's a reason why I picked those cities. Those cities are literally rebuilding, and that has a powerful lure for certain cities. Now, most cities, however, are playing what I call the amenities game, and every city is guilty of this on some level. They basically line up all the cool stuff that they have in their city. Oh, we've got, parks, we've got a performing arts center, we've got professional sports, we've got stadiums, we've got this, and this. They line up everything, and then they sort of compare themselves to other cities, right? The problem is that there are about 10 cities in America, those superstar cities, you all know them, that can play that game all day long, and you will play it, and you will eventually lose that game. If you play the amenities game, you will lose to Chicago, to San Francisco, to Boston, Washington, D.C., New York City. It just is. What if we were to change that game? What if we were to try doing something a little bit different? And maybe some places I think have had to do this. Certainly, Detroit, New Orleans, Cedar Rapids have had this foisted upon them. And then there are other places, like Braddock, Pennsylvania. This is John Fetterman. He's the mayor of a small town outside of Pittsburgh called Braddock, Pennsylvania. They rose and fell with the steel industry. At the height of Braddock's population, they had about 25,000 people. They're now down to less than 3,000 people. Now, Braddock can't play the amenities game. And in fact, they're taking something and they're doing it radically different, mostly because this guy thinks of things very differently. You notice on his arm, the tattoos, those are the dates of when people have been killed in Braddock. He says, this should not happen on my watch. He's pretty serious about this stuff. And on his other arm, he has the zip code for Braddock. Because he said, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm willing to put the zip code on my arm. Any politicians here willing to put their zip code on their arm? Just check. Now, this is a project that they did in conjunction with the Levi Strauss Company to tell the story of Braddock, to tell something very different. If we could bring the sound up on that as well. This was filmed entirely in Braddock. These are Braddock people. The narrator is a child from the city of Braddock. And this is the way they have chosen to market themselves and to essentially say, we are still here, and this is the type of people that we're looking for.
We were taught how the pioneers went into the West. They opened their eyes and made up what things could be. A long time ago, things got broken here. People got sad and laughed. Maybe the world breaks on purpose, so we can have work to do. People think there aren't
Maybe the world breaks on purpose so that we will have work to do. That is so far from the amenities game that cities are playing. That is essentially a challenge. It says, are you bold enough? Do you want to be part of the solution? Do you want to build? And think about how powerful that is to us as Americans. There's something about this notion of the frontier that we all respond to, that this is in our DNA. And this city has had to embrace this idea because they can't play the amenities game. And they're attracting these purpose-driven people like yourselves who want their work to matter. That is simply to go beyond simply consuming their city to actually building and rebuilding community. Now, what if we were to take that as part of the way we communicate about our cities? That would be very bold of our cities because it's essentially saying that we don't have everything. We don't have all the solutions. We don't have all the amenities. But what if we were to do that? What if we were to take that bold step and say, we want your help? And I don't think of that as a sign of weakness on the part of our cities. In fact, I think it is the ultimate sign of strength when we're willing to ask for help. And we don't need a lot of these people. Like the most powerful of spices, if we attract just a few more of these folks, a few more Bob Devin Jones, Phil Cooley's and Claire Nelsons to our community, the ones who are going to start things, the ones who are going to make a difference, a few of these folks can have an exponential impact on the total quality of life that we have in our places. Maybe if we can get more of you guys to emotionally engage in your place, to start things, you can have an exponential impact with you and a few friends and a smartphone. You could have an incredible impact on the quality of life in your places. And don't wait for permission. Because think about it, right now, there's a huge gap between the city that we desire and the city that we can afford. And if we're going to sit around and wait for City Hall and official government to get rich again and to build all the things that we'd like them to build for us, it's going to be a long wait. I say we get in the game. I say we get and we start by committing to loving our city. By not waiting for permission to go out and start something. Make it small, but then do it again and again and again. Because we're talking about creative potential, right? Well, we're not going to reach our creative potential, and we're certainly not going to reach our potential as human beings if we're just chasing a paycheck. It's when we start chasing something else and we start maximizing meaning and love in our communities that we will flourish as people and as cities. I hope you will take this idea as something worth spreading. Go forth, love your cities. Thank you very much.